ليش بقول دايما أنا كذبة because I'm not supposed to be here.
How did your passion for dance or for music, choreography, and all of these various aspects that combine the notion and the definition of dance come to life? When did you feel that passion or that heartbeat?
Well, you know, my father was the owner of a radio station when I was 6 months. They left Palestine, and went back to Egypt, from which they both were origins. How my passion for dance began. Frankly, I have no idea. The thing is, music has been my big thing in life because my father owned a radio station in Cairo, where they were, and he was a specialist in classical music, opera, etc. I grew up in this atmosphere of good music. I always felt I needed to dance. Why, how, I have no idea. But at one point, there was a young woman, an Egyptian woman, who was, a German woman, who was a prima ballerina in her country, fell in love with a pasha in Egypt, married him and lived in Egypt. And somehow she felt that I was about 11 years old, felt I had a need to dance. She gave me private dances in classical ballet. Then she had to leave Egypt, and this thing stuck to me. Anyway, I went to a school brought up by wonderful Irish nuns. Unfortunately, which was supposed to be fortunately, I finished school at age 14. So whenever my family tried to find a place for me in a university, to register me in a university, how old is she? 14? No, send her back to school. Anyway, I thought that it would be interesting to learn dance. I had learned a little bit with that German woman. So, but also I wanted as a profession to be a journalist, a reporter. And I thought, if I'm going to be a journalist, I'm not going to let anybody take pictures for me. I want to write the articles and take the pictures. So I went to the most famous, with my mother, of course. I didn't go anywhere without her. I was only 14, nobody wanted me. So we went to a very specialized photographer, Albon, he was called. He was the best one in Egypt. He used to take the official pictures of the palace and so on. And he said he was going to give classes. So I went to register for the classes. The girl who was at the reception happened to be somebody taking ballet classes. We started talking about ballet classes, about her teacher and so on. We forgot all about photos. I registered at the ballet school, Mrs. Friedel Nichols, the most wonderful person in the world. And this is how I began ballet. And from the moment I was a student, that the first year I took with her, I used to go twice a week. She told my parents, this won't do. You have to bring her every day. And the first performance I ever took part in, they spoke about me in the papers. شو بدنا نعمل؟
When did your journey start in Lebanon? When you had your own dance studio, how did that start? What was the turning point for that to happen?
We came to Lebanon in 1956, and we settled and so on. And I took a job because my sister had to go to university. She went to university. I left for later. Meanwhile, I had finished my university studies in Egypt in a very difficult way, by correspondence with Oxford University. My love for ballet continued, so I registered in schools here and so on. And at one point, my father died, so I felt I had responsibilities. And there was a person who had a cultural center who had been at my neck for months and months, come and teach. I didn't want to teach. When my father died, I thought I needed an extra job. So I accepted, began teaching there. When I took the place, there were about 16 students. After 2 months, they were up to 60. So it went to his head. And one day I got flu and had to be in bed. In my absence, I had organized the classes by age, by possibility, and so on. When I got sick, he started accepting students the way he wanted, sticking them in class. And so I disagreed with him and left him. What happened was the kids who were with me were very upset, and they started phoning me and saying, we don't want to go on with somebody else, we want to go on with you. And one student in particular, Josiane, she was about 13. One day she phones me and she says, I don't care where you teach, even if you teach in your bathroom, I'm ready to take ballet classes in your bathroom, but I want to study with you. And it clicked, and this is how I began. I began my first school, and it grew. Just don't ask me how it grew. The thing had its own life. I say that I dragged behind me a huge train with people going into that train, stepping out of that train, many of them remaining on the trip till the end with me. It's the richest thing that happened to me in life. Of course, my life is full of other things than teaching. I was a professor at the Lebanese University. I traveled a lot. I became part of the International Theatre Institute. I gave lectures. I gave radio programs. I gave television programs. And I founded the first ballet company, the first professional ballet company in Lebanon in 1966.
What was the name of your studio?
I called it École Libanaise de Ballet, very humbly. Today, any young lady who has a 5x5 or 4x4 meter studio calls herself an academy. I'm not an academy. I still was, rather, because now I don't have my schools anymore.
And how were you able to fund your school? What was the essence? Of course, when you become part of the dance community, that is the way forward, to have your own school, your own academy. But back then, how were you able to fund it? How were you able to create the brand, as they say nowadays? How were so many people aware of who you were back then and who you still are today?
I'll tell you a secret.
Please do.
Today, I am very, very jealous of all those little tidbits of people who teach anything, dance, music. Anybody teaches anything. They always have sponsors. They always have institutions. When I began, there was nothing. No sponsor, no funding, no nothing. So I was working for the United Nations. And from the money of the United Nations, funded the school, broke down walls, installed the wooden floor, the mirrors, bought the piano, everything from my money as an employee in the United Nations. And then I left the United Nations and became wholly concerned with the school, and it grew. Just to ask me how it grew.
How were you able to segregate the area? How did you know that this area would be the right area for your product, your baby, as they say, which was the studio back then?
Well, it's a very stupid answer. I happened to be living in Hamra, above the pastry La Brioche, and crossing the street to where the Commodore Hotel was and still is, I found an apartment. This is why I say I broke down walls, because it was an apartment. I broke down walls, turned it into a school, and this is how I began. It's incredible. And you know, I'll tell you something which is very important, which people ought to know. At that time, music, there was no theater at the time. Music, dance, etc. It was, خليها تروح تتعلم تتسلى. It was even less than a hobby, you know. I remember when we were students, they asked us to do something for television. One dance that one of my girlfriends was in, the moment we had to do it on TV, and it was all indirect. This is why I have nothing of all these things. It was all done indirect. At the last minute, her father said, we don't have any, معنا بنات بيرقصوا على التلفزيون. He removed him. So the whole idea was, it was nothing, okay? And on top of it, I was trying to do it into something more serious. But I am a woman. I am a girl. And you know the mentality. Now it's still not good, but can you imagine in 64, I opened my school in 1964. It looks like 5,000 years ago. So I wanted to do things correctly. So I applied to there was no Ministry of Culture then, which was good because the Ministry of Culture really has no use, okay? We had the Ministry of Education. I applied for a permit. I wanted to be legal. So, and this is where the Gebara family of Marjayoun comes in. My friend, Allah yarhamu Emil Gebara, who happened to be the secretary of the President of Parliament. What I think it was Abdullah, I'm not sure. Abdullah Yafi at the time, yes. And he helped me. Every now and then, go and bring us this paper. We need the certificate of this. For about a year, go and come and bring a paper. Go and come and, the only thing they didn't ask for was toilet paper. So, anyway, after a year, everything was ready. I get a phone call. You have to come to the ministry to sign and get the permit. I ran away like a nice little girl. And they had those huge registers, you know, this big register file like this. And where do I sign? Here. And then he stops and he said, but where is your father? I said, I'm sorry, my father is dead. Allah yarhamu, you know, there's always a folkloric, your brother, don't you have a brother? No, I don't have a brother. Your husband, you're not married? لا, Allah يقدم الخير هذا. So you text and plunk. You can't sign. You can't get a permit. What do you mean? No, you can't get a permit. I phoned to dear old Emil, crying, sobbing. This is what happened. He started laughing. He said, don't worry. أنا بدبر. And he dabbered. But do you think I felt important? I felt like nothing. Like nothing. If you don't have a man to. And indeed, I opened the school. The school was already going. And while I was fighting for my permit, after a year or so, I get, how shall I call it, a threat, whatever. There was at that time a law called دعوة مستعجلة. They could throw you out of your apartment or your business or whatever in the space of 3 days. They would have a very urgent or whatever trial in court, and in 3 days you were out. So he takes me to court, the landlord. He wants the school because I had done all this. He wants the premises. And of course it was terrible. And they told me, who is your judge? I told them, Salim al-Jahel. Salim al-Jahel is like this. The law is the law, you will be out. Thank God. Salim al-Jahel asked for the files of all I had done. And he saw that I had brought down walls, all my expenses on the flooring and so on. He told the landlord, okay, you have the place, you can take it back, But you have to pay her indemnity. You have to, at that time, 50,000 liras. 50,000 liras at that time, you could buy buildings. Thank God. God is always by my side in my moments. My landlord happened to be stingy. So he didn't want to pay me 50,000 liras, and I saved my school. So I had later on a branch of my school in Tripoli, and with time I had a branch in Ain Saade, and my big dream was the school I founded in Zouk Musbah, 1,240 square meters. It was a dream, but a dream that I built within a nightmare, because it was in the late 70s, early 80s, and the civil war was smack in the middle of the worst part of it. From the terrace of what I was building, because I built it from nothing, it was a terrace. I would see the ships take people to another country, and I am putting a stone over a stone. And I built my school. To be an artist, you have to be a little bit mad. And this madness in artists is a blessing. You know, especially we as dancers, make us look like those butterflies, the night butterflies, which see the flame, and they know they will be burnt by the flame, but they still fly close to it and eventually get burnt. But what a glorious burning when we come and do what we have done.